Found inside an apartment unit, the other outside the Scarborough building. The bodies were found around 2 this afternoon at Birchmount and St. Clair Avenue. That's where we found our Kelda Ewan. She's on scene for us tonight. Kelda, I understand police just gave us an update. What did they have to say?
Hi, Dwight. Yeah, the police just gave an update just moments ago. We haven't learned too much, and they themselves haven't learned too much yet either. They haven't identified the two deceased. What we do know so far is that they were called to this apartment building, 544 Birchmount Road apartment building. Right now, there's still forensics that are here. Homicide investigators are here. The coroner arrived not long ago. A lot of residents as well just arriving home now from work, wondering what is going on. We just got an update again. Not too much information at this point that has been revealed. We know that the call came in at about 2:15. Now, when police arrived, they found a dead body. They said they found a body inside the apartment on the 8th floor. They also found a body at the exterior of the building, right outside the building. Now, police and investigators, they are currently at this moment on the 8th floor. They are canvassing. They're speaking to witnesses. They said that it was several witnesses who called them just after 2 o'clock, as I said, around 2:15, telling them that there was a body that was outside the building. So right now, again, the two deceased have not been identified. We don't know the relationship. We don't know what happened right before this incident. What we do know is that two bodies were found here today, and police, they are still gathering evidence. They're still talking to witnesses. A lot of details we don't know yet, but they are trying to get those questions answered, and hopefully they said they will have an update later tonight. So what we do know today right now is that, yeah, two bodies were discovered. A coroner is on scene right now, and we will be getting an update again later tonight. Dwight?
All right, thank you for that, Kelda.
She was a very bubbly person.
She was funny. She was loving.
The fact that someone could have just, been trying to get some clothes or been even trying to get warm, it's horrible.
Her name was Crystal, and now how she died this morning, trapped partially inside this clothing donation bin, now has the mayor calling for a safety review. Her death is a tragedy, and it's not the first. At least 7 other Canadians have died that way, according to the Canadian press, getting into one of those bins and not getting out. West Vancouver closed its bins after a man there died a week ago. Now, Toronto is investigating whether they're worth it. Alicia Sound is live near Bloor and Dovercourt, where the woman died. And Ali, some people call these bins death traps.
That's right. So, Dwight, the bin once stood behind me here. It was removed several hours ago. It's just out front, or out behind, rather, of a tall apartment building. And I spoke to residents here today, and they told me they would often see people, often women from the shelter around the corner, propping themselves up and into these clothing bins to grab some clothes for themselves. And from what we're learning, that's exactly how Crystal died overnight.
I can only imagine it was not an easy death.
Crystal was homeless and believed to be about 34 years old. She was a regular face at Sistering, a drop-in shelter just around the corner.
When I heard this morning when I was at home and I heard that someone had died, I hoped and hoped and hoped it wasn't one of our women, but given the location, I assumed it was.
I said to her, I bet it's someone from Sistering, because it's just around the corner. Yeah. So, oh my God, oh my dear Lord. I'm like, how does somebody die from that? How?
Her friends say she was getting clothes for herself when she got stuck. It has to do with the closing mechanism. Let's say you're putting a bag of clothes in the bin. You open the slot and place the items in the tray. There's a piece of metal that's supposed to prevent someone from sticking an arm in. But people have their methods.
She was to go in a donation box, and she was to prop the door open so she wouldn't get stuck in it.
The slot is about 2 meters off the ground. If the person's weight shifts, the tray rotates in such a way that can crush them. Crystal is the 8th person in Canada to die like this.
Is this the best way to collect clothing?
Today, Mayor John Tory called for a review of this style of donation box.
I think it is extremely important in light of what's happened now that we should examine the safety implications of of these boxes.
Late last month, a 34-year-old man died in a West Vancouver donation bin, all of which have been removed. Last November, a 32-year-old man was found dead inside a bin in Cambridge, Ontario. While Toronto mulls over what to do about what some advocates have called death traps, shelters are warning service users
not to go into those bins and reminding them that they can get whatever supplies they need, from clothing to toiletries to hygiene products. We have all of that here.
Crystal's friends will remember her spirit.
She was a very bubbly person. Like, I loved her. I still love her, even though she's not here anymore. But
So we have learned that there are 460 bins just like the one where Crystal died across Toronto currently. We heard from at least one major clothing bin manufacturer, and they said that in light of recent deaths, they will be redesigning their bins. And Benai Brith, which is the charitable organization which ran the one that was here at Bloor and Dovercourt, they said today that they are saddened by this news and they're working with the police. The police tell us tonight that sadly they have not yet reached Crystal's next of kin, so they won't be releasing her photo until they do so. Dwight.
Yeah, just a tragic story. Thank you, Ali. A man is in police custody after driving his Toyota Yaris through the front window of a downtown Porsche dealership last night. At least 3 vehicles inside were damaged, and the driver wrote his ex-girlfriend's name on one of them. Now, police believe the incident was because of a recent breakup. The driver also spun his tires, crashing, causing smoke to fill the showroom. Police told staff at the dealership that the man did this on purpose and wanted to be arrested, and he got his wish. Starting next Monday, Toronto police will be hitting the streets, launching the Tag and Tow Blitz, trying to keep lanes clear during rush hour.
This is inconsiderate behavior. This is behavior that we can't continue to tolerate in the city. It inconveniences hundreds of other people just so that the few who want to break the law can go and get their dry cleaning or their coffee or make things more convenient for themselves, even in terms of delivering a package.
This will be a zero-tolerance campaign. You won't have one of our parking enforcement officers or a police officer coming up behind you and giving you a friendly honk to get you to move along. You will be receiving a ticket that costs $150.
The Blitz will also focus on delivery truck drivers who they say have slipped into old habits. Similar campaigns in the past have led to more than 6,000 tickets and more than 1,000 tows. Police are also doing a distracted driving blitz next week, focusing on drivers who are looking at their phones. The province put in new rules for distracted driving with harsher penalties starting on January 1st. If your credit card is lost or stolen, report it missing and it's immediately canceled. But one transit rider learned that Presto cards don't work that way. As Lorena Redekop reports, there are also other concerns with the cards.
I had $90 on it, but when I looked again, it was like at $65, so I was a little bit worried.
Heather Dixon takes the GO train between Burlington and Toronto for work. On the way home yesterday, she noticed her Presto card was missing. She reported it lost, then checked her account.
So I checked my balance online and saw that somebody had found the card and was using it. Somebody took the bus in Burlington here, and then they got back on the GO train station, and then they went to Mississauga. And then that's when I started to get a little nervous that they were going to be using it again today.
That's because she noticed that on the Presto website, it says users are on the hook for all charges up to 24 hours after they report their card lost or stolen.
If you lose your card, you're sort of out of luck, which is surprising to me. It's just really surprising in 2019 that is the answer.
It isn't a perfect system by any means, but it certainly is better than losing all of your funds, because that's what would happen if your card wasn't registered.
And Dixon's not the only one who's fed up with Presto. Adam Rathwell's old card had a small crack and just stopped working. He has this new card now, but because he immediately registered it, he couldn't transfer his money.
This is a consumer technology, like, Tim's cards or Starbucks cards. It seems like something that could be easily solved online. It seems like they're adding an extra process that doesn't need to be there. I don't understand why I couldn't transfer my balance from one card to my other card.
He followed the Presto website and was able to transfer the money onto a third Presto card. In Dixon's case, $21 was spent on her card. After getting no help from customer service, she complained on Twitter. Now, Presto has agreed to refund all her money. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Burlington.
Is it? Could it really be? No, your eyes aren't deceiving you. That is the first Eglinton Crosstown vehicle from Bombardier right here in Toronto. It was delivered to the Crosstown hub at Mount Dennis and Black Creek this afternoon. Last week, we told you how Bombardier had 1 month to deliver the first 6 light rail vehicles. Metrolink says they don't have a timeline when the rest of the order will be delivered. For the first time in his presidency, Donald Trump will give an address to the nation from the Oval Office, all about border security and the government shutdown now in its 17th day. But will any of the networks, those who he called enemy of the people, even air it? We'll have a preview live from Washington coming up. All I have to say, Colin, is that it could have been snow. We'll take the rain.
Yeah, we'll take the rain. And that's what we have with the kind of mild temperatures we're looking at out there right now. You know, parts of southern Ontario say winds are double digits, 11 degrees today. Okay, not quite as warm as that in the GTA, but still some mild temperatures hanging in there. 5 degrees right now in Toronto, Markham at 3, Oshawa at 3, Mississauga 5 degrees as well, and St. Catharines for you guys too. Now I'm showing you the winds, and you're seeing, well, hey, there's not a lot going on with the winds. We're seeing some different directions, calm in some cases, not terribly strong. All of that is going to be changing. So the next 24 hours, a real transition for us, going from mild conditions over to some much colder air that's going to be coming in. Now, in terms of what we're seeing in precipitation, a little heavier batch here of the shower activity because of the temperatures above freezing. Then we get into drier areas here and then more moisture to come. But as the temperature falls off, we'll see that turning into a bit of a mix with some wet flurries in the overnight hours. And then as the winds get stronger, and by tomorrow coming in from the west, northwest, mostly west, but west, a little northwesterly component, they'll be driving in at 40, 50, some of the gusts even 60 kilometers an hour. We'll start to see a bit of a setup. So up into the snow belt, areas could very localized see 8 to 10 centimeters. It will be mostly some scattered flurries that we get through the GTA, and that carries on that risk into the afternoon hours tomorrow as well, and the temperature kind of falling through the day. So overnight tonight, coming down as it does, a bit of mixed precipitation, 0. The winds getting even stronger as we go into Wednesday, -1 by tomorrow afternoon. I'm telling you, that's nothing. Just wait till you see some of the numbers that are coming as the Arctic air is going to push in here a little bit later in the week. And I'll show you all of that, Dwight, coming up. Whether you want to see it or not, I'm sorry.
I'm going to cover my eyes. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The truck driver involved in the Humboldt Broncos bus crash has pleaded guilty to 29 charges in connection to that deadly collision last spring. Jaskreet Singh Sidhu appeared in court this morning. Bonnie Allen has more on the story from Saskatchewan.
This morning, Jaskreet Singh Sidhu stood up in court dressed in a black suit and tie and said 5 words: "I plead guilty, Your Honor." When he said those words, there was an audible gasp in the courtroom among the families who were there to hear those words come from his mouth. They had feared that he would say not guilty and that would lead to a prolonged court process and criminal trial. But he has taken full responsibility. He directed his lawyer not to do a plea bargain, not to go to trial, that he knew he cannot make things better, but he doesn't want to make things worse. He has pleaded guilty to dangerous driving causing death, 16 counts of that. It has a maximum sentence of 14 years in prison, 13 counts of dangerous driving causing bodily injury with a maximum sentence of 10 years. CBC News has obtained an agreed statement of facts on the case. It confirms Singh Sidhu blew through a stop sign and collided with the bus without even braking. Alcohol and drugs were not a factor in the collision, and it's believed he was not distracted by a cell phone. But even that, there have been previous cases shown that simple carelessness is not always considered criminal. That the Chief Justice has said even good drivers are subject to momentary lapses of attention. But in this case, Sidhu has taken responsibility. There will be 5 days of sentencing at the end of January with many victim impact statements. Scott Thomas, the father of Evan, who died in the crash, says that just hearing the words "I plead guilty" has given him the closure that he needed, that he doesn't actually care whether Sadhu spends 1 day or 10 years behind bars.
He was guilty, he acknowledged that. That's all I needed to hear. The rest of the sentence doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. It's not going to bring Evan back.
Now, also at that sentencing submission, we will hear all the facts of the case, accident reconstruction, as the defense likely argues, for the lowest sentence possible for their client. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Melfort.
Tonight, Donald Trump will make his case for the border wall directly to the American people. He's scheduled to make his first ever televised address from the Oval Office to a primetime audience, trying to pressure the Democrats into funding the wall. The Dems will then speak second. Ellen Morrow is live in Washington for us tonight. And Ellen, what are we expecting Trump to say?
Well, Dwight, this is going to be President Trump, as you said, making the case for the need for a border wall with Mexico. And the border wall is really the issue of why we have this government shutdown now into its 17th day, with really no sign that it's going to end anytime soon. So President Trump is going to go on TV tonight. He's going to address the American people directly, and he's going to say that there is a national security crisis on the border with Mexico, and so therefore a wall is needed. Now, what we're going to hear from the Democrats is going to be an opposite reaction to that argument, saying that President Trump is using this issue for political purposes. The question is, how are these two sides going to come together and end this shutdown, Dwight?
From the U.S. president, though, what's happening tonight, Ellen, it's unprecedented.
It is unprecedented for the president. You know, it's very rare moments that we see the president make addresses from the Oval Office. They happen at times of great national crisis. And the question is, ever since President Trump said he would make this address yesterday, does the situation at the southern border actually rise to that level of requiring this kind of address? This is going to be a political message, and that's why the Democrats immediately after the address was announced wanted their turn to rebut what President Trump has to say, and we're going to hear from them directly after his speech tonight at 9 p.m.
Morrow joining us live from Washington tonight. Thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome.
This is where it started. This is where I grew up. You know, I grew up as a man, as a basketball player.
Certain areas. Will it be his last time on this floor? Vince Carter returns to the Scotiabank Arena tonight as the Raptors host the Atlanta Hawks. We'll have that story coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Vince Carter is back in Toronto tonight as our Raptors host the Atlanta Hawks, and it raises the same question we've been asking for the last few years now. Will this be his final game in Toronto? The 41-year-old is playing in his 21st NBA season. Greg Ross is live courtside at Scotiabank Arena. And Greg, you talked to Carter today. Did he give any indication of whether or not he'll retire at the end of the year?
Well, Dwight, the short answer is no. In fact, he said that he really loves playing the game. He still loves everything about it, including those bus trips and those late-night plane rides. But he said it is something he's going to have to think about, and he'll have to wait to the offseason to make a final decision on that. Now, if Carter does decide to call it a career, that's going to be a tough pill for at least one of his devoted fans to swallow. I caught up with a man who came here all the way from Washington, D.C. today to see the team and the player that he has loved since he was 9 years old.
I'm Raptors for life, but Vince Carter is my Michael Jordan.
Herman Hodges still remembers the exact moment he fell in love with the Raptors and became a lifelong Vince Carter fan.
I was in 2000 when Vince Carter put his arm in the rim in a slam dunk contest.
Carter with his first on the final round.
Carter went on to win the dunk contest in the All-Star game, and Hodges has never wavered in his devotion to both Carter and the Raptors. In fact, he wears his Raptors gear to games in Washington, D.C., where he lives, anytime they roll through town.
I never missed a Vince game, and I've never missed a Raptors game since 2013.
Hodges will be at the game here tonight as well, because if it is Carter's last game in Toronto, he couldn't risk missing it. He's already missed one big moment while on duty working as a D.C. police officer.
I was at work when he scored his 25,000th point, and I was probably too ecstatic for what I was doing at work.
Carter gets it back to him, and Vince dunks it for 25,000.
Coincidentally, he did it with the dunks against the Toronto Raptors, so that was amazing for me, and that made my night.
Carter, who turns 42 later this month, says he's not sure if this will be his last game here because he has yet to decide if he's going to retire at the end of the season.
For me, that's one of those final decisions that's tough to make until the last minute. I try to imagine myself saying, oh, this is it. This is my last trip. This is my last whatever, and I just can't imagine it right now.
He says he still loves every minute of it, particularly when he gets to come back here to Toronto.
Out of every team that I've played for, I spent the most years here. A lot of success, a lot of ups and downs. I think this is where I grew up. You know, I grew up as a man, as a basketball player.
It may or may not be Carter's last game, but one thing we know for sure, it will be Hodges' first game at Scotiabank Arena. In fact, it's the first time he's ever been in Toronto.
Everyone's so nice here. I just feel like I'm at home, to be honest.
Now, I got to say that Hodges has actually been trying to meet Vince Carter and trying to get his autograph ever since that slam dunk contest in 2000. And that almost happened today. Almost. You know, we were actually shooting some footage with him when Vince Carter came out of the team hotel today. That's where Hodges was waiting to meet him. And when we pulled him away, Vince came out, signed autographs for fans, took some pictures with fans. And by the time Hodges came back, he was already on the bus, so he missed that opportunity because of us. Now, there is a silver lining here, Dwight. I did talk to the PR guy for the Atlanta Hawks. They took Hodges' phone number. They said they're going to reach out to him, and they're going to try and do something for him. So maybe he'll finally get that opportunity after nearly 20 years to meet Vince Carter.
Greg, it's your fault, buddy. Oh, man. Hopefully we can get it together. Thanks, Greg.
Deep print the charger and the cord.
Okay, now you're just getting rid of junk.
No, not just the junk.
I love it because my kids can look and say they grew up with a reflection of themselves on the screens, right? And it really is a golden age where we see our voices reflected on the screens and anything is possible. We're not limited anymore by the color of our skin.
Still ahead, I get to talk with Mr. and Mrs. Kim themselves, Paul Sun-Hyung Lee and Jean Yoon, ahead of Season 3 of Kim's Convenience. It's premiering actually tonight. The interview coming up. As the documentary series Surviving R. Kelly sheds light on the many women who have accused the singer of sexual assault, Facebook has pulled a page created to discredit one of his accusers. It's the latest chapter in a 2 decades-long saga that has seen multiple allegations of sexual misconduct dogging the hitmaker. Yelena joins us now with the latest on this and what we're learning here.
Yeah, I mean, Dwight, the Facebook page that you mentioned, that had to do with R. Kelly's people putting together this page that would say what it's like to face a liar or lies told against you. And so that was just to take down one of the accusers. And Facebook, as you say, they took that page down. So this is all in the wake of this 6-part documentary. It debuted on Thursday night, and it contains more than 50 interviews. So we're talking about testimony from women who accuse Kelly of mental, physical, and sexual abuse. It also features interviews with associates and relatives of the singer, including his brothers. Now, prominent speakers include Tarana Burke, who's of course the founder of the Me Too movement, and singer John Legend also provided some commentary. Now, have a listen to the series of women who spoke out about the abuse they say they faced when they were younger.
A part of me always felt like maybe I did something for him to treat me that way.
I want my story to be heard so people could take this situation seriously.
But when I found out it wasn't just me,
I just don't want it to get any worse.
I think I can't really talk about being abused. It's like, it brings back memories, and it's very painful to have to talk about it again. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Clearly some really difficult stories being shared there. Now, it is worth noting that R. Kelly, for his own part, he has always stated that he is innocent against any of these claims. Now, someone who has documented this from the start, talking about decades ago, is Jim DeRogatis. Now, he used to work for the Chicago Sun-Times, and he ended up giving an interview to us today here at CBC to talk a little bit about his experience in covering this.
Every one of these girls I've spoken to for 18 years loved R. Kelly's music, thought they loved him, thought that he would make them a star, as he did for Aaliyah or Sparkle, who appears in the documentary, and instead he ruined their lives. And that just tears my soul apart.
I know, personally, I've stopped listening to his music, but there's been a lot of fallout from this.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because there have been some reports coming out to say that there was a potential spike in listenership to his streams. Yeah. Now, we still have to confirm this with Spotify. They have not issued a statement to that effect, but if so, it does have a lot of people scratching their heads, wondering why. It is worth noting that the executive producer of the documentary, Surviving R. Kelly, says that all of these former collaborators were asked to participate, and they declined. So people like Lady Gaga, Erykah Badu, Celine Dion even worked with him many years ago. They said that they asked Jay-Z as well as Dave Chappelle, and really John Legend was the most prominent person that said, yes, I will come on. I have no problems talking about this, and I want to say that I really do feel for these women and what they have gone through. There you see Lady Gaga in a performance. So a lot of people really just, this has them talking about an issue it's been out there as rumors for many, many years. And now this documentary is just pretty much the biggest synopsis, if you will, of everything that's happened over the past decades. And again, he does deny all the claims, but is still, all of these women want to share their stories.
It's kind of like that Bill Cosby thing where you heard about it, and it built and built and built, and we'll see where this one ends.
We've seen a lot of these Me Too type cases, so yeah, we'll watch it.
Thank you, Yelena.
See you soon, Dwight.
Ontario's chief coroner is looking into a rash of police officer suicides in the province this last year. But for one family, it's bittersweet and too little too late. They wanted an inquiry years ago when their loved one took his own life, but they were left with disappointment.
Predominantly, the answer that we got was there's nothing that could have been done. The question isn't why was 2018 a particularly bad year. I think the question is why in 2018 is this still happening?
We'll bring you their story coming up next. More than 4 years after her father took his own life, a Peterborough woman says not enough is being done to address the mental health of Ontario police officers. Richard Rogers was a Toronto police officer. He died in July 2014. As Farah Morelli tells us, his daughter now hopes a coroner's review into police officer suicides will provide some answers.
So it's been about 4.5 years since we lost my dad.
Definitely happier times.
Lorianne Rogers remembers her father as a lover of animals. She says his downward spiral mentally began in 1994 when the Toronto police officer was first on scene at a car accident that killed his colleague.
He was doing sort of CPR on his friend, and that was sort of the first incidents where we really saw him impacted by the work that he was doing. He also went to medical advisory services within his own Toronto Police Service, trying to get help, begging emails towards the end for some sort of assistance.
Rogers and her mother say he never got that. He killed himself just months before his 25-year anniversary with the force.
I'd reached out to anyone I could think of to say, I don't understand why this had to happen, why this had to end this way. This doesn't make any sense to me. We had been told, they sort of cursorily, I think, looked into some things, but predominantly the answer that we got was there's nothing that could have been done. And I guess, quite frankly, I don't accept that.
Last week, Ontario's chief coroner announced it's conducting a review into police officer suicides in 2018. It's news that gives Rogers cautious optimism.
I think those families probably deserve some answers. I know we felt like we were owed some answers. But I also think that the question isn't why was 2018 a particularly bad year? I think the question is why in 2018 is this still happening?
Rogers' father's death won't be part of the review into police suicides because of how much has changed since 2014.
What I look at, though, from a general point of view and talking about deaths that have occurred before, again, sadness and condolences to those, but also hope that the broader look that we're taking in a systematic way will address many of the issues that they felt occurred in the loss of their loved one.
Toronto's police chief and his deputy were not available for an interview on this issue of officers' mental health and what, if anything, has changed. It did say in a statement that over the years it has increased its wellness services, and that includes access to psychologists and a critical response team. It added it will review any recommendations that might come from the coroner. For now, that's all Rogers can hope for, that others won't come up against the same barriers her father did.
When they need help, we should be there to help them.
Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
York police are hoping the public can help them identify this man wanted for stabbing someone outside a Vaughan nightclub. It happened December 23rd on Interchange Way. Investigators say there was an argument inside the club between two groups. They were kicked out. The suspect then waited for the victim in the parking lot and stabbed him. He then fled in a white Mazda. Anyone with information on this suspect is asked to get in touch with York Regional Police. Unifor President Jerry Dias met with senior General Motors officials in Detroit today, but GM did not budge. The Oshawa plant will close this year, putting thousands out of work. Jason Vio joins us live now from Union Hall in Windsor. Jason, tell us what happened at the meeting.
Well, certainly no movement on the part of General Motors today in Detroit, but Unifor was quite clear in their message. They aren't prepared to give up. They're not taking no for an answer. Now, Unifor did say in those discussions, those private talks today in Detroit, General Motors did acknowledge that they are aware Canadians are furious with the company because of the decision they made to close that Oshawa plant, but they say they were also a bit surprised by the backlash they received, according to the union. Now, Unifor did go into that meeting hoping to discuss some of the proposals they put forward last month, one of them being to keep the plant open for at least another year in the short term until they can figure out things long term. That was in the collective agreement to keep the plant open until at least 2020. Now, the Unifor says that they didn't dig deep enough, they didn't try hard enough to keep that open, and they believe that's because they call it corporate greed. Now, the head of the union that represents the some 2,500 workers in Oshawa who will lose their jobs come the end of this year was also in those private discussions in Detroit today. He did come back here and speak. He appeared a bit angry as well as emotional. Have a listen to a bit more of what he said today.
I'm totally devastated, disappointed, and disgusted with the General Motors decision today. They had the opportunity to make a right decision and change the choices that they made. They chose to stick with their decision in the name of corporate greed. It not only affects 2,500 workers in Oshawa, it's going to devastate a community.
Now, Unifor did end its news conference today by saying not only did General Motors pick a fight with the union, but they also picked a fight with the rest of Canada. Dwight.
Now, Jason Dias said he would not acknowledge the closure of the plant, but what are the union's options from here?
Well, even though it appears that GM's decision is final, as I mentioned, Jerry Dias is not willing to accept that, but General Motors did release a statement today outlining what they believe are reasons for them not being able to accept those proposals. They did appreciate, they say, General Motors, the enthusiasm and the energy that Unifor did put into those proposals, but they rejected them for two reasons. They say it would just be too costly. The cost would be too substantive incrementally, but they also say if they did move forward with Unifor's proposals, it would cause the company to lose some of their competitive global advantage. But still, Jerry Dias isn't giving up. In fact, he says it's really just starting in terms of fighting to keep this plant open. He had a message today for both consumers and both levels of government. Have a listen.
We're not advocating for a boycott. We're telling General Motors that Canadians are already boycotting them. But ultimately, it's a question of consumers being loud in saying to General Motors they've had enough. I am frankly disgusted by the silence of our governments. I'm actually disgusted the fact that when people need government when they're in trouble. People need government to stand up and fight for them when their backs are against the wall.
So what's next? Where do we go from here? Well, Unifor says it's holding a major rally on Friday, this Friday, in Windsor along the riverfront with those GM buildings in Detroit in the backdrop. They want to put pressure, continue to put pressure on General Motors to come to some sort of compromise to keep the plant open. They want to keep it at the forefront of people's minds. And they're also saying that they're ramping up ad campaigns, media campaigns. They say all of this is just beginning. Dwight.
Jason Vio in Windsor for us tonight. Thank you, Jason. The Assembly of First Nations National Chief is criticizing the RCMP today. Perry Bellegarde says the use of force against peaceful protesters blocking pipeline construction in northern BC is a violation of human rights and First Nations rights.
Is this reconciliation?
People are watching, people are paying attention, and hopefully we can stand up, take some action, and come together, bring awareness, do what we can with what we have to say no, we will not be treated like this.
Hundreds showed up to protest at Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto today. They marched to Yonge Dundas Square. There were scenes like this across Canada, including in Ottawa, where they impacted the Prime Minister's plans today. Anti-pipeline protesters breached security at a venue where Justin Trudeau was scheduled to speak to Indigenous leaders. That prompted a venue change for the event, but Trudeau did eventually make his remarks.
Your dedication to this land and your people has demonstrated through your actions, has been demonstrated through your actions.
Trudeau also acknowledged there was plenty of hard work still to come. He was speaking at the Canada Modern Treaty and Self-Governing First Nations Forum.
I like that it is Indigenous women and it respects that I'm Indigenous. So they actually know, like, okay, maybe if you're stressed out or something, you need to cleanse, so then we'll smudge and stuff. I respect it.
They have higher infant mortality rates, and their child apprehension rate is 12 times higher than the rest of the population. But a new program at St. Mike's Hospital is trying to change that for Indigenous communities. We'll take you there a little later in the show.
was not a cutie pie. He was more like a bread.
Bread?
Yeah, big, round, crusty loaf. And not everyone want a cutie pie. Some people want a ruffled teddy bear. One eye already missing, arm falling off, but they don't care. They like all the stain or smell.
I love Mrs. Kim. Mr. and Mrs. Kim are back on TV tonight. Season 3 of Kim's Convenience premieres at 8 o'clock right here on CBC television. I met with stars Paul Sun-hyung Lee and Ji Yoon to talk about the show's success and why it is resonating with audiences now around the world.
We've all kind of really established ourselves artistically, and I think our team has really, we're all really like a well-oiled machine. So everyone is just pushing the boundaries just a little bit more, funnier, sharper.
Absolutely, you know, we're firing at max capacity in that sense. And now that everybody, like Jeannie says, is far more grounded in their characters, we're really starting to challenge them now.
Talk about how this show has changed your lives since you started playing these characters.
When we first did it at the Fringe, my son was 7 years old.
And now?
He's 7. He's 15 now.
It's given us immense opportunities we never thought we would have before. We're able to showcase our abilities, which is great. It's provided a sense of financial relief in a sense too.
Huge.
You know, as theater artists, it's really nice to have that stability as well. And really, it is this joyful expression of being able to honor our parents and do work that everybody enjoys. And it's like living the dream.
Yeah. So many Canadians are immigrants, and so much of our experience is informed by those cultural divisions that happen between older immigrants and their children. And so many of us experience it, whether it's Korean, Chinese, Caribbean, Polish, Ukrainian. So many of us have gone through that, and I'm so proud in this moment that we're that we're on the air.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a big year for Asian representation in films and on TV. Now you guys are ahead of the curve because you've been doing this for 3 years now. Do you feel pressure then in this environment for this show to succeed?
You know, we are representative now of a larger community, but that's always been part of our makeup in everything that we've done. Now that we're successful, it really is a push to keep succeeding and to keep excelling, but that comes from within, and we don't feel like, oh, if we fail, everybody fails. I love it because my kids can look and say they grew up with a reflection of themselves on the screens, right? And I think other immigrant families might be more willing to let their children follow in the footsteps because they see success stories and they see what can happen. And I think audiences and everybody will pull together, and it really is a golden age where we see our voices reflected on the screens and anything is possible. We're not limited anymore by the color of our skin or where we come from, because that's where true storytelling comes from, is all these different places.
A picture of your Oma and your Appa.
Oh, that is nice. Thank you.
And for you, Jared, just me.
Let's talk about Sandra Oh. I mean, we have to celebrate this great Canadian actress and what she did at the Golden Globes. I mean, we all just felt such joy. My favorite part is when she thanked her parents, right? Like, it was such a proud moment for Canada. What did that win mean for you guys?
Sandra Oh is so talented, and she has single-handedly broken down all kinds of barriers in her career. And then when she won, it was just so much pride and also just so much joy for her.
Yeah.
And her parents were really cute.
They were really cute.
They were so cute.
Yeah, maybe we can get Sandra to do a guest appearance, you know?
We wish.
Sandra, if you're watching, come on.
Come on, Sandra. You come back.
Guys, thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Already, they're going to season 3. Already greenlit for a 4th season. It's going to keep on going and going and going. And, you know, we all can shop at Kim's Convenience. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That's fun. I'm having so much fun this week at Schitt's Creek yesterday, Kim's Convenience today.
I know.
All these great comedies on the CBC.
Lucky you, plus mild temperatures to go along with all that fun, right?
It's not going to last, though. I'm sorry to tell you, we have much colder air that's going to be moving in, so it's time for a little bit of a reality check. That's what we're looking at here is our average low at this time of year is -10, okay? And our average high around -2. Yeah, we're way above that, but things are going to be changing, and we're going to see those overnight lows getting even cooler than some of those seasonal values, and that's going to be pretty soon. Right now, though, we can enjoy 4 degrees out there in Toronto and Mississauga and Markham at 3 and Oshawa 3 degrees as well. I put the wind chills on here because there's not much of a wind yet. That is going to change dramatically even as we go into the overnight hours tonight. So what we've been seeing because of the mild temperatures have been the rain showers. Some of those showers changing over, though, mixing with a bit of wet snow or wet flurries because there's still more moisture to come. And that's through the overnight as the temperatures are falling off. Then as those winds get quite strong coming in from the west, gusting to 50, even 60 kilometers an hour as we go into tomorrow, we'll see some lake effect snows back to the northwest of the GTA setting up where there could be accumulations of 5, 8, even 10 centimeters. And we're going to see some of these scattered flurries making their way certainly towards the GTA. So we have that in the forecast, kind of a little bit of a mix. Light stuff, just a dusting, and then into tomorrow afternoon, still some scattered flurries will be hanging in there, and then behind it, all this much colder air will be filtering in. So some of the gusts you're going to be seeing through the overnight picking up over 50 at times, maybe even over 60 kilometers an hour. So that is going to give us a wind chill, even though there isn't one out there right now. Overnight tonight, as the temperatures are coming down 0 to around -2, scattered flurries tomorrow afternoon. The temperature doesn't change much, 0 to kind of -2 even into the afternoon hours. It starts to plummet after that. So kind of a transition day that we're getting into. Wednesday night into Thursday -6. Thursday, though, the temperature doesn't change, the high -6. And look at the overnight low. So these wind chills you're seeing here are what it's going to feel like in the afternoon hours. In the early morning hours and overnight, Dwight, it's going to feel like about -20 with the wind chills. So Arctic air is on the way.
I love how you put the fields with the bright pink there, just to make sure we see it.
Yeah, not everything is pretty in pink. That's not.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Indigenous communities across Canada have much higher rates of infant mortality than the general population. Indigenous children are also more likely to end up in care. But a new program designed by St. Mike's and a group of midwives is trying to change that. Philip Lishanek explains how.
A little tired.
A prenatal checkup at the 7th generation midwives in Regent Park, part of the Baby Bundles program.
That's the baby's heart rate there.
The Indigenous midwife is not just concerned about the mom-to-be's physical well-being and the health of her baby.
What about cultural teachings or smudging or different things that you would want to do?
The last time she gave birth in a hospital, the 31-year-old wasn't allowed to do the traditional cleansing ceremony.
So I like that it is Indigenous women and it respects that I'm Indigenous. So they actually know, like, okay, maybe if you're stressed out or something, you need to cleanse, so then we'll smudge and stuff.
Along with traditional counseling and healing, the Baby Bundles program provides access to mental health and social service agencies, such as housing support. It's hoped that this kind of holistic support will mean fewer Indigenous children will end up in the children's aid system. According to Statistics Canada, the rate of Indigenous kids in care is 12 times higher than non-Indigenous kids. This midwife says the same mentality led to the 60s scoop, when Indigenous children were routinely removed from their families and sent to foster homes or adopted.
And that, creates a system where we're calling child protection services way more often, they're getting involved in people's lives way more often, and babies are getting apprehended way more often for reasons that are very different than they would be for non-Indigenous families.
While 7th generation midwives is open to all, the center has an Indigenous staff and leadership, and it's designed to be a welcoming, spiritual, and respectful space. Now, this birthing center was purpose-built with Indigenous traditions in mind, just as the Baby Bundles program has a holistic approach to treating mother and child. It's had a huge effect on Indigenous kids in other countries where it's been tried.
The model that we are trying to implement here is based on a program in Australia, in Brisbane, where about 10 years ago they were facing a similar problem of a high number of infant apprehensions among Indigenous families.
Now, she says, by strengthening supports for families, no children are taken away. It's hoped that that can happen here too, and prove that early intervention can go a long way. Philip Lishanek, CBC News, Toronto.
When I saw the 50s on your map before, I'm like, is she doing Fahrenheit? But you were talking about wind gusts there, right?
And I wish, right?
I wish, yes.
No, these wind gusts that are coming, we're talking about some strong winds, and they're going to start up overnight tonight and then get stronger through the day tomorrow. So sustained winds tomorrow, even from the west to northwest, 30 kilometers an hour, but gusting 50, even 60 kilometers an hour. So we go into a real change from where we were today to the temperatures coming down, but cold with that wind chill coming as well.
Transition time. That's it for us tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everybody.